Welcome to the Laurent Collective podcast, where we go deeper than just surface talk.
Each week, we'll explore everything from family, business, creativity, culture, and faith.
To make sure not to miss an episode, be sure to subscribe and hop on to Instagram at Laurent Collective to chat with us about this episode. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome back, or welcome for the first time.
Exactly. Hello. We are the Laurent Collective podcast, and we are happy you are with us today. And today we are going to jump right in and talk about, it's no secret maybe that we are in our 40s. So I guess maybe it is a secret if you're new. We're in our 40s. And we thought we would talk about life advice, if you will, just things or observations.
I was going to say things that we would tell ourselves in our 20s.
Yes, now that we are in our 40s. And I've heard so many of these, I think, before and stuff like that. But so we want to say this all with, like, obviously you do learn over time things. That's just natural. But there were a lot of things that I just wasn't paying attention to in my 20s, or that no one ever did. I never heard it. And so we thought, you know what, even if you've heard it before, we're going to say it again. Because maybe you'll hear it this time, and maybe you're struggling with something, and that will, I don't know, maybe help. As well as we just happen to have, London's a young city, and we have lots of friends in our community that are in their 20s, or maybe that have just barely entered their 30s too.
The way you said that sounded like London is a young city.
No, sorry.
And so
people in London. London is not a young city itself. No.
Yeah, there are a lot of young people in the city of London.
I need another city, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I meant. So we'll we could go on and on with this, actually, probably, because there's so many things when I look back, I think, and I wouldn't say, I don't have regrets.
No, I think my hope is that we kind of stay on track a little bit, because I think we could
go all over
talk
the place.
a lot about it.
Don't worry, you guys, we did take some notes, but we'll see if we can keep ourselves on track with this. Maybe this will be a 2-part series.
Who knows?
Yeah. So I would say our lives look drastically different than they did in our 20s. Obviously, our early 20s, we were still in university, so there's that part. But if we jump past the university phase into like when we started our careers and stuff like that.
we got married right away.
Right away after university. Well, I did. You have been out for 2 years, and that kind of thing. So we got married pretty young. Compared to most of the people we know, and that kind of thing. So there was that, but then there was also, careers that we started and that kind of thing. Just so you guys know, like, it wasn't until 5 years into our marriage that we had actually visited London, and we thought, oh, we'd love to live here. But then we found out I was pregnant with Zane, and so that we just put that to bed really quickly. We're like, nope, that doesn't make sense. And so it's not like we actually were working towards moving to London. In many ways we were, and we've talked about that before in our story, but there wasn't like an active for us personally. We just thought, that's done, that's never happening. So for us to be where we are now and those kinds of things, I would have never envisioned this, because we are in very different places in our 20s. So
yeah, for sure.
It wasn't for me until I was 29, so I guess right before I turned 30 that I had quit. Well, actually, I quit my job to go to a part-time job to start my photography business. But then I was still working, 20, 30 hours in a normal, I don't like to call it normal job, corporate job. Should we call it that?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's just a little background on us and who we were in our 20s. And so one of the things that we would say in our 40s that now when I look back, I think, gosh, I personally was focused on this. I don't know if you'll have to say whether you felt you were or not.
Yeah.
But we completely got sucked into the corporate world's idea of climbing the ladder. And so for me, that was like, well, you don't stay in a certain position. You should always be reaching for this next thing and reaching. And there was always, in the firm that I worked in, there was promotions every year and things like that, and your annual reviews and all that stuff. And it's a cycle that we got caught into really quickly. Right off the bat. It wasn't even just
definitely
gradual.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you got caught into it?
Yeah, mine looked a little differently just because with working in the advertising world, for my position, I started out as like a junior designer and then an art director, and then the next step would have been creative director. And for me, I think initially that was like my like, yes, that's what I'm going to do. Those are the steps I'm going to take and do all that kind of stuff. But then I think early on, maybe six or 7 years into my career, I started to not really desire that next step, and things like that. But I would say I definitely got caught up in, making sure I was taking the next step, constantly and making sure that that I was taking the right steps, that I was improving my skills in the right way. I was, learning how to meet with clients in certain ways and just all that kind of stuff. And so I think, yeah, for sure. I think, I feel like for me, it wasn't necessarily climbing that ladder as much, but more, making sure my artwork and the things that I was creating were making headway as far as the type of awards that I was winning. I think that was,
yeah, that's very much.
I think that was more what I was starting to get caught up in, like, certain campaigns that I would work on, or certain, branding elements and things like that I was doing, would start to get traction, start to get notification, start to win awards, start to be in magazines. Like that was more of my push, I think, in that way. So.
I think some of the climbing the ladder part also was when you technically do that, when you get promotions and stuff like that you make more money. And so that was, we both graduated from a university that we came from two programs that are, tell you when you're in there, like, oh yeah, like you'll be 1 year and then you'll get this and you'll do this and you'll, and for me particularly, I graduated the May after September 11th, after 9/11. And so like the economy was just in a totally different place, and that kind of thing. And so some of that wasn't even real anymore. That wasn't how it was going for several years. But there was always something about, it wasn't even, yes, for me, definitely, it was about the status thing too, about like, this is now my title, but it was also about the fact that with each of those ladder climbs, if you will, like it meant more money. Yeah. And I would say we desired that part probably even more than the other part, because we were really good at acquiring stuff at that time. So say we
didn't really have a great handle on spending. So I think I would definitely tell my 20-something self,
I guess,
like,
before we jump into that,
relax.
Though, going back to the climbing the ladder thing, what do you think we've learned about that in our 40s? Now that we're in our 40s and we can see that we were caught up in that part, what do you think we've learned that we would say to somebody in their 20s or to our 20-year-old selves about that?
I think it's more about, at least for me, it's more about doing the thing. It's so cheesy, but doing the thing that I'm passionate about and love. And it really doesn't matter, about the awards anymore. It's not about being known, any of that kind of stuff. As long as you can, to be honest, as long as you can continue to make a living and to support your family or yourself and all of that, like, as long as you're still doing that. And I don't know, that I think for me, it just never, I would definitely, I just, as long as you're not comfortable isn't the right word, but I think being able to do the thing that you love, being able to still be passionate about it, I think that's a big deal.
Although that will wane a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
But
and I think, I don't know.
I would say for me, I don't think I understood what my drive was. Like,
that's
we
true.
are very,
yeah.
You guys know, we teach creative business owners to find the purpose in their business. And I had no clue. Again, I was just reaching for the fact that, like, oh, there's a, this, or, there's this title I would love to have, or there is this money that is involved, or those kind of things. Right. And when I started my own, when we started the photography business, there was something different then. Suddenly it was like, wait, this is different. This feels different. I have a why behind this.
Yeah, that's the biggest.
And that kind of thing. And it felt different going into, working versus than it had for me before.
Yeah.
And so I think if I were to look back, if you are about that and you are, you said passionate, and I do believe everybody should be passionate about what they're doing, but like some things, we were in a stage several times where like there was a point where I couldn't get a job at first, and I was doing an internship, plus I was working 2 different jobs at the mall. I was not passionate about those 2 different jobs at the mall. So I want to first say, like, some of you may be in that place where you have to be doing certain things to just be paying the bills and stuff. And so I know that is hard, and I've been there, and I know what that's like. And so I think it's just the idea of like, what is your why? So even if you are in those positions where you're going to something that you maybe do not love or don't have that kind of thing in it, what is the why behind it? Maybe it's because you're paying off bills and stuff like that, or debt or things like that, or you're doing this to get this current position to get some experience to move into something you really want to try, or those kind of things. But I think definitely if I had... It could have changed things. I think back to those times, and I was in a great position when I left the firm that I was with and everything. But I felt really empty. There wasn't a whole lot in it.
Yeah,
while everyone else would have looked at me and been like, "Oh wow, like within 5 years of being here, you've kind of done this thing and you've had this movement and money wise and stuff like that." Like I left it just kind of going, ugh. So if you have that feeling.
Yeah,
I think that would be, and why do you want to climb that ladder? What is the reason? So, it may very well be because you want to impact more people and things like that. Great. Why do you want to impact them and that kind of thing? Why do you want to help lead them? That kind of stuff. I wish I had that attitude instead of it just being a status thing or a money thing.
Yeah, I think that's more of it. Yeah, for sure. I think you're spot on. Like, I think you articulated what I was trying to say, but but yeah, understanding that why and that the purpose that you have or that drive within, the thing that you love to do or whatever, like understanding that helps in so many different ways, where I think, when I was within a couple of firms and stuff like that, we were doing like amazing things, but it doesn't, like you said, there were certain things that kind of left you like feeling a little empty, like, okay, I'm creating this thing, but like, is it really doing the thing that, is it impacting in a way that makes me spark up and light up and, things like that. And so, yeah, that's for sure.
So, and like we said I wanted to wrap up that part before we jumped on, a lot of at least for the money driver for me was, we have a lot of stuff, or we want more stuff. And for us, we've talked about our debt story before. Please go back and listen to that episode of getting out of debt and everything. But we definitely got caught into that, this is what you do at this stage. You get married, you buy a house, you get a car, brand new car, not a used
car. Maybe 2 cars,
that kind of thing. And then you fill your house with stuff. And depending, what kind of person you are, that stuff like looks different. Like we had this back in the day before there were flat screen TVs, this ginormous TV we bought. Like I feel like we bought a house and we bought a car. That happened all within the same month. A brand new
maybe
car.
Even like a week.
It might have even been because my car just completely died right after we had purchased our house. And then the TV came quickly afterwards as well. And again, all those things, and those TVs were expensive during that time. They were so heavy with all that stuff. And then it was like, we have a house now and it's bigger than what we were living in before. So we want to fill it with some new furniture, not use some of the same stuff we had before. And it keeps snowballing. There's like no end to it. It's always not enough. And I think that's the thing now looking back in my 40s where we live in the a little bit smaller size house than we did when we were in the States. And I look around and, it's very much stuff. I mean, sure, there's some things because we have kids. Like I can see different things right now. I'm like, ugh. But that's just because of kids, of having some things like that. But in general, our house is filled with things that we love, that inspire us, that give us joy and that kind of thing. And we really are pretty good, not to say that we're perfect. We're pretty good about saying like, do we really need this thing? Or that
or
thing?
If something comes in, something has to go.
Has to go out, that kind of thing. But boy, when we were in our 20s, that attic we had in that house was filled with stuff that was like, oh, maybe we'll use this again when we decided we were going to buy a new version of it or whatever it is. And I will say the driver, I feel like for a lot of that was, again, probably comparison. of other friends and other people, or whatever we in our own head said. That was before social media really was around, so it wasn't that telling us to make our house look a certain way. In fact, I don't even think Pinterest existed yet, so I didn't even feel pressure with any of that stuff. So. There was home magazines. You picked up magazines. But there definitely was probably a little bit of like, ooh, we just went to this person's house. And I really liked that thing. Or we just went to, in the States, we went to Target all the time. And we're like, ooh, a new designer came out with new stuff. We should put that stuff and get rid of the other stuff we bought 2 months ago, or things like that. And that pattern created then the need to have money to fund that pattern.
I mean, to be honest, we watched a lot of home shows.
Oh, we did.
So like a lot of those home shows would just like get you and, oh, well, I think I could probably do that at home. Like, let's do that. Let's try this. Let's try that. And like,
we did some pretty cool stuff too.
So we did do some cool stuff, but I think you definitely get caught up in that system and that cycle of, whatever the new thing comes out, and it's like, oh, let's just replace that and let's get this and let's get that, and then you end up saying, well, I still kind of like that, so maybe like you said, like let's put that up in the attic because maybe next month we'll
decide we want it.
Yeah. So
done with it.
I think yeah, we definitely have learned a lot about that, and for sure.
I think too, stuff takes on different forms. So we're talking about like house stuff and that kind of thing too. But clothing was a thing for me for a while as well. It could be makeup, it could be video games, it could be whatever, like whatever stuff is.
Tools.
There is kind of a thing in the suburbs of the States. It's like, I have this tool.
Yard
you
things.
Have that tool? And that kind of thing. There is all of that. So whatever stuff looks like. It could be also like keeping up with people, and you think you have to be going on this holiday and this vacation and that vacation and stuff like that too, or that kind of stuff. So I think looking back again, again, you can always see it in hindsight differently, but looking back, that didn't make us happier. All of those things had a very short-lived happiness factor. Like I remember coming home and there was some big game on American football game that we had watched on that big TV. But then after that, I remember us several times being like, gosh, this TV is really big.
It's massive.
Now it's taking up this much space. What are we going to put around it? We don't really like the way it looks. Like it quickly diminished its return on its value, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah.
The brand new car that we had bought, like it within a year had issues.
Yeah.
And the type of car and brand that we had bought, like the parts were really expensive. Again, we could have done research and figure that out, but still
we just saw it looked fun, it was bright orange, like it was a blast, but and if you even when I think of, because I worked at the mall, and so it was very easy to spend money at the mall, and the amount of clothes I'd be like, oh, this is in trend right now, and it would last a few months and then that trend was gone, and I no longer wanted to wear that to quote unquote look out of trend. So I bought stuff that was always like, if you will, trendy and not classic pieces that I would keep through the years and that kind of thing. And so again, and sometimes I would buy that stuff and it gives you a high to buy something, and then you quickly go on a low really quick because you're like, oh, I don't want that thing anymore, or that kind of stuff. So I think it would just think about, why are you buying things? And it's so cliche, but stuff doesn't make you happy. It just doesn't. Yeah. And and thinking about, again, in some ways going back to the why, like why do you need this? Why are you getting this? That kind of thing. And if your motivation is because other people are doing it, that might not necessarily
be a good reason. Like, yes,
because I would definitely say we easily fell into that so many times.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. Sorry. Yeah. Like, money does make things easier, so I don't want to make it but money doesn't necessarily make you happier. So, and same with like stuff. Yes, having a roof over your head and things like that, like in food and that stuff. Those are essentials kind of things. But the big TV or the brand new car, those weren't essentials, but we thought they were for some reason. So, and I think what it caused us to do was to spend beyond our means.
Yeah. Definitely.
And so I think that was one of the biggest things too. Is like, live and spend within your means, and that will set you up so much for the future in a better way.
Part of me doesn't even remember where we spent our money.
I know. When I don't understand. Back on it, I don't understand what we did with our money either, because we made a lot of money during that time, and then
that would probably be one of the bigger things that I would want to tell myself in my 20s is definitely spend within your means.
Yes.
Because
and save.
it was just not something that we did.
Because emergencies will come.
Yeah.
Really, if you can, whatever your investment things are and stuff like that in your 20s, if you can start doing that earlier.
Gosh, in some
great.
ways, spend below your means and save, save. And
you'll be so thankful for it. Have an emergency fund and everything. And so again, all that did of acquiring the stuff and spending beyond our means was cause stress, not happiness.
Mm-hmm.
It caused stress because then it's like, oh, I have to pay this thing off, or, oh, this thing isn't actually that we spent a lot of money, isn't really giving me that feeling I thought it was going to have, and that kind of thing.
Well, even like when we moved here, we sold everything we owned pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I remember when we were doing all that stuff and going like, what? I don't even remember this. Or where was that? Like, there were just so many things that when we were selling them or like, getting rid of it or something like that, it was just like, why do we still have this? Or when did we have this? It was just such a weird time to do that, but also extremely freeing to then go just to have a complete reset.
I think too, there's something, we've talked a lot about like career and money and stuff like that, but there's also just something, you will feel more confident eventually, and it's not going to come overnight. And it doesn't matter if you are male or female or whatever, like whatever you identify as, it will come. In your 20s, you are I can't remember the exact age that like men technically don't hit adulthood till a certain time in their 20s. And I can't remember when it is for women, but like you are very much still forming as a person in your 20s. And I think there's this idea like once you're 18, you're an adult and like you should feel confident in your own skin and things like that. And that's just not true.
Yeah.
It wasn't true for us. I think some of these things that we probably did, like acquiring the stuff and wanting status in our careers and things like that, was us trying to fill that confidence void, as well as comparing ourselves to others instead of just focusing on like what we uniquely had to offer the world and things like that in our path. And for me particular, it was definitely in how I looked or how my body looked and things like that, and comparing myself to others or comparing myself to what I was seeing on TV or other places. And it was so easy to just be caught up in that all the time. Versus, I feel like each time we've aged in our, early 30s to mid 30s to now, like I feel more confident than I've ever felt in my life before. And it's with experience. That's the hard thing, right?
Right. Oh, yeah.
Is I do think you can get there earlier than probably I did or we did and that kind of stuff. However, a lot of that does come with life and doing life and putting yourself in new situations and getting through some hard things, failing at some stuff, things like that. Realizing when you look out at the rest of the world, everyone has different body shapes. Unfortunately, I think it is getting better. I will say when I was in my 20s, I only saw one type of body on everything. Sure. It is getting better of seeing different shapes of bodies and things like that presented to us and that kind of stuff. But it was really easy to get caught in a spiral of I'll never be that. I'll never be this, that kind of thing. I have a vastly different understanding of how those images are created, things like that. But yeah, I don't know. What would you say about that with confidence level now?
I think, I mean, just thinking about, just being who I thought I was or what I think obviously I would tell myself, things take time and you will continue to mature and with experience and things like that. Like you'll have more confidence in who kind of you are and the things that you're doing and the way you're talking, the way that you can impact others and things like that. Like, as you get older, you'll go through things, you'll experience things that will help you in that process. I think a lot of times coming out of university, again, I think because of our age and maybe the generations before, the tendency was to, have this certain path of like you learn a skill and then you do that skill forever. And so you should already have all the confidence, you should already have all the knowledge. So when you get into whatever you're doing, you're equipped and ready to go and you're set and you just do that forever kind of thing. And I feel like now even like thinking about Zane and his, he's gonna have multiple things that he's probably will step into in his lifetime, and that's kind of a normal thing where I think, and so I think just having confidence that it's okay, like the things that you're doing now in your 20s are going to help you to whatever else is going to come down the road.
If it's not the same thing at all.
Exactly. And so just being, okay with where you're at too is confidence, I think, too.
I think something I would have done in my 20s, which I don't think we pursued more until we were in our 30s, is seeking help in areas. There's something that happens in your 20s when you have separated away in some form or another from your parents, and you're learning the new things and coming, maybe you've already done some of this in your teenage years, but you're coming to terms with everything from your beliefs to your life choices to all those different things. And seeking help is it sounds weird to say that's a confidence booster.
Yeah.
But what it's going to do is it's going to help you sort out a lot of things. And when I say that, I'm talking about therapy right now. Mm-hmm. And being open with other people too. Like I feel like in my 20s, I hid a lot of the stuff I was struggling with because I didn't want others to think, again, I wanted to put on a persona of, and again, that's just my personality as well. But I don't think until we may have had a little bit, but until we were in our 30s that we were like, oh, there are some areas we need to kind of untangle here and that kind of stuff. I think you should be doing counseling and therapy all throughout your life, but there's no reason to wait in your 20s if you are having certain things that you're like, I'm struggling in these areas, or this is really every time I feel such a lack of confidence in this and stuff like that. Like there might be something else under there. And I think that would be something that I would tell my 20-year-old self is like, it's okay to ask for help. Mm-hmm. It's okay to like talk things out. It's okay to tell others you're struggling. I think that's
I think that vulnerability, doing. Like just being vulnerable it exudes confidence. I think I would tell myself that, like, seeking out people that have either gone through it already, or again, like you said, going to therapy or whatever it is, like seeking just, experienced people. Like, I don't know if we did that enough. I feel like we probably felt like we could handle it.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, hopefully, that's what I would definitely tell
somebody has
myself for sure.
Drilling next to us in our house.
There might be
sorry if you can hear that in the background. Always perfect timing. So I think wherever you are and how you're feeling about yourself and your confidence and maybe what you're doing or your direction or anything like that, like, first of all, there is very much different than how it used to be. There's no direct path that continues to follow the same thing. I would have never guessed we would be where we are right now. Definitely probably felt like this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to stick with this thing. And we really encourage our kids now, like, there's going to be careers that you don't even know exist yet. When I graduated with public relations, I mean, we weren't even taught about social media. Like, that is pretty much what you do in public relations now. And that kind of thing. And so, you're always learning. That's the other thing too. That doesn't just because you're done with university doesn't mean that's done. You're always learning, and that will help you in your confidence too. So, but again, it doesn't happen overnight. It's work.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think the last thing we would say that we didn't do the best job at was like being present. And that's, again, I feel like we're using some cliche terms here, but I think we always were just looking forward to the next thing. Or even when it comes to like some of that stuff we acquired and things like that, of like maybe not enjoying certain things and always like, oh, but this is not quite the best thing that I want, or those kinds of things. And the idea of just of being present and enjoying your 20s. Like, I know we've maybe sound, I hope we haven't made them sound like, dark and, well, just wait, because when you get older, it'll get better.
Yeah. Like just get through them kind of thing.
Yeah, that's not what we're trying to say at all. Like, it does get better, but it also is like, I look back and, we have such great memories in our 20s and our friendships and things like that. Things we traveled and, we had our first child in our very late 20s. Well, no, you weren't 20
I was
yet.
29.
You were 29 when he was born. Okay. And then, so I think, it's not gloom and doom.
No,
But what we're trying to say is like being present in the fact of like not wishing for, it's just like our kids, like what they will say to us, I can't wait till I don't have to go to school. And we're like, but then you have to work, and that kind of thing, and enjoy where you're at. And it's so easy to say when you're on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't be like, oh, I just can't wait till I'm, at this certain point and that kind of stuff. Like enjoy where you're at, take it in and learn those things that you need to at the time, because then you can help others as well that are behind you in that. And that's the joy of it, is none of us are doing this on our own. It feels like that sometimes for sure, but we're not. We're in it together. I
think it's just enjoying the process. Like, again, that's like being present for me. It's like making sure that you're enjoying the process rather than wishing that you're already there. Mm-hmm. And
there are certain things that are not fun in any of
No, definitely. And I think in some ways we had to go through some of those stuff to be where we're at, obviously, and learn the certain things that we would want to tell our younger selves. Mm-hmm. And so, maybe our path would have been vastly different, but I think, we wouldn't be here unless we had gone through some of those harder times as well. And so, I think, again, definitely being present would be definitely something I would definitely tell myself, because, again, I was always hoping for the next thing and getting to there. And then, once we were there, then it's on to the next and all that kind of stuff, instead of really like, stopping and looking around and just, wow, this is really cool. Like, I can't believe we just bought a house, or I can't believe that we were able to do this, or we were able to, go to London for a vacation. Like, how cool is that? And, so I think, again, just making sure that you're present in that was something I definitely would tell myself.
Yes, for sure. And again, all of this, like what we talked about, we could probably do a whole nother podcast on this, but these are some of the things that we feel like with our friends who are in their 20s that we end up having conversations with and everything. But so whether I think whether it's about like trying to constantly be going up and up and up in your career, whether it's about acquiring stuff, whether it's, about how you feel about yourself and your confidence level, or any of those things, it is again about the fact that like you have your own unique path on where you're going, and it's going to look different than others. Mm-hmm. And all of that stuff is going to come into play with it. That, again, I think definitely in my 20s, I thought, oh, they're over here, they're doing this, and over there, they're doing that, and over there, they're doing that. If I just put all those things together, then like somehow my life will look similar to theirs. And it never worked out that way. Yeah. Doesn't mean you can't get ideas from other people. We have a podcast, we're giving you ideas all the time. Right. But you get ideas and you make it your own, and you try different things, and you have these unique paths that lead you on to things of where, 5-10 years from now, you're like, how did I get here? This is, and that kind of thing. And I would say, there's never something that you're so stuck into that you can't be like, just never mind, this isn't working for me, reverse. Like, you're not committing, you're not stuck in something. Mm-hmm. You can always come back and realize like, oh, I made a wrong decision there. Try something new.
Learn to fail well.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
For sure.
So we hope this has been helpful. Do let us know. We'd love to hear from you guys of other things that you're like, we don't hide our age. It's fine. We're in our 40s.
Yep.
If you're younger than us and you would like to hear us talk about some other topics, we very much grabbed these from friends that are in their 20s and that kind of thing, and things that they ask us. And so if there's anything else that you guys want to know, we are happy to share our elderly advice.
Our wisdom. Yes.
Our wisdom. There you go. Thank you guys for listening so much. And if you have a second to go rate and review this podcast, it helps out other people find it. And that's so helpful to us. Thanks so much.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of the Laurent Collective podcast. If you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, which helps others find our podcast. Continue the conversation with us over on Instagram at Laurent Collective.
We look forward to going deeper than just surface talk with you again next week.